Guys, welcome back to another Big Al Devlin video, and this is a continuation of my sort of myth and legend fighting series that was made popular originally by, I believe it was Scalagrim and Shadversity. Certainly they're the channels that I've been watching on. Thoroughly enjoy it. However, this is a continuation, this video, of how to fight a minotaur. Now, on Shadversity and Scalagrim, the guys on there, they have a real vast knowledge of the different types of weapons that you can use and different tactics, medieval sort of tactics that you can use to fight these mythological creatures. But myself, I do have some knowledge of that, obviously, and I have shared that in a previous video, but my real expertise is how to use these, and that is how to fight in unarmed combat, okay, or close quarter combat, I suppose you could call it, okay. So I'm a fully trained martial artist, got in 5 martial arts, I think it is, that's time I looked anyway, and I've got a lot of sparring and fighting experience, and so really I thought, well, why don't I actually film a video where possible on how to fight these mythological creatures without weapons. I think that'd be an interesting slant on how to protect yourselves against these mythological creatures in case you find them ever down a dark alleyway one day. Okay, and of course what we're starting with is the minotaur. Now we might not be able to do this with every creature, like how to fight a dragon with your bare hands. Well, first move you do when you fight a dragon with your bare hands is you bend over and you kiss your ass goodbye, because you don't stand a chance against that kind of thing. So it's not going to be applicable to every creature, but a minotaur is something that you could, in theory, yes, fight barehanded. And you might think I'm crazy saying that, but let's just listen to what I've got to say before you formulate that kind of opinion. Now, this was kind of like something I didn't actually think of to start off with. I was thinking, yeah, you'd need a weapon to handle one of these things, just because it's so much bigger, stronger, very aggressive kind of creature, and it's just, especially if it's armed and armoured itself, you don't stand a chance really trying to fight with your fists. But one of my subscribers on here, Celtic Guide, said about, well, you know, legitimately people in real life have wrestled bulls and have overpowered them through techniques and things like that, and it's documented. And I thought, you know what, that just clicked a light bulb in the head. How would you fight a minotaur barehanded? And as I say, I'm going to try and apply these my fighting knowledge, my unarmed fighting knowledge, to every mythological creature that we come to where it's possible. Okay, so the first thing to note about a minotaur, if we break it down, is it is roughly humanoid in shape. It has a bull's head, might have cloven feet, but generally speaking, it's got 2 arms, 2 legs, a body and a head. So the nature in which you hurt it is the same way in which you would hurt a human. There's just a couple of little bits you have to be careful of, and that's its horns. Okay, that some humans don't have, and these will be dangerous if it manages to gore you with them, just like it is on a bull. The other most dangerous aspect of fighting a minotaur is its body weight, not its strength, its body weight. Its body weight is going to be quite immense, and so all he has to do to really, if you do get up close and personal with him and start fighting with him, it's not when he strikes you, but when he grabs you and falls on top of you, okay? And he will crush you, possibly. He will break bones, okay? So the real issue you've got is his body weight and his horns. Strength is an issue to be aware of, but when I first started martial arts, I weighed 10.5 stone and I fought 20 stone guys, so I was fighting guys sometimes double my weight, or sparring with them at least, and I was winning and I was beating them because I had superior technique to them. And that's the thing about martial arts. Martial arts can tip the balance for you and allow you to defeat much larger opponents because you're fighting clever. You know, you're fighting with this as well as these, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some of the principles that I have used in the past against big guys. So one of the biggest guys that I fought in when I was it was actually during one of my grading, is when I was becoming a senior instructor. Part of my senior instructor certificate was to involve myself in both teaching and fighting and stuff like that. And one of the biggest guys that I fought for my Muay Thai certificate, this is, was 6'10" in height, and he weighed about 20 stone. At that point, I think I was, when I got my certificate, I think I was 16 or 17 years old, so I was quite young. I think I was 16 years old. I was the same height I am now, so 6'2", so we're looking at about 8-inch difference in height. and I weighed 10.5 stone, so we had a good sort of 9.5 stone at least in body weight difference between us. So there was a major difference, and we're looking at those kind of differences between me and a minotaur now. So I'm nearly 19 stone now. So if you know you could apply them, I could fight in theory using the same principles the best part of 40 stone minotaur, roughly 7 foot tall, okay, using these same principles. So these are definitely applicable techniques on how to handle something as grotesque as a minotaur. Now obviously I'm not saying these would necessarily work, because you've got to remember that this minotaur really is going to be aggressive, and if it knows how to use its aggression correctly, there isn't that much you can do. But there are techniques you can use. Okay, now the first thing that you need to understand is it doesn't matter how big, how strong your opponent is, there are certain weak spots and certain positions that you need to try and get your opponent into, at which point their body weight and their strength counts for nothing. There are two parts to the body that allow you to manipulate their body and their positioning, and that is their head and their hips. Okay, and this will be very familiar for people who have done Muay Thai, clinch, Greco-Roman wrestling, Gleamer, any kind of wrestling or movement that tries to put the opponent onto the ground. As I say, the two main areas to control on your opponent are their head and their hips. Head is preferable, and that's why I'm trained to control mostly, because I'm more of a Muay Thai fighter than anything else. And a Muay Thai grip, you get your hands around the head and you control the head, and when you control the head, you control the opponent. You can control exactly where they go. Every time they go to punch you, bang, you pull them in the other way. Say they were to throw a punch this side with their right hand, I would have pulled them this way, and their punch will hit me with no power whatsoever, if not completely miss. At the same time as when I pull them this side, it also opens them up for a knee, okay, or to an elbow to the side of the head, things like this, right? So this is where Muay Thai clinch can come in handy. You control the head, you prevent them attacking you, you tire them out as well, because this is actually very tiring for the person to be in this kind of grip. You imagine their head here, and it opens them up to attack. Okay, the other way to try and control your opponent, and this would be possibly something you might have to do against a minotaur, because it is so tall. If you're a little on the shorter side, or he's a little bit on the taller side, you might not be able to get quite to the head, and that is you control the hips. And again, it's just pivoting. Okay, so you just literally put your hands on the hip, and you can control them. And every time you feel a movement over here, you push over here, and it's just generally controlling the flow of the attack. And that's the important thing to note. Reasons why I'm pointing out these sort of major control points is, one, they allow you to control a much stronger opponent. When you are expert at controlling the head or the hips, you can hold a much bigger, stronger opponent than yourself just by using technique, and you don't need strength to be able to hold and manipulate them. It's like manipulating a joint. Doesn't matter how strong they are, if by them using their strength they're kind of almost bending their arm in the wrong way, if you've got their like a proper hold around their elbow, there's nothing they can do about it. They can't use their strength. Okay, and so this is why, regards control of the opponent, putting these weak spots there for you and trying to visualize it in your head, you need to control this minotaur's hips. You need to control its head. That's the most important areas to focus on to start off with, because once you control it, then you can start opening it up to attacks and to different types of strikes to finally disable the opponent. Now, the hips are not going to be a great place to go for, I will admit that. I mean, it's one of those, well, if you've got nothing else to go for, yeah, definitely try and control the hips. But the minotaur being so big, so strong, and so heavy, it's going to be very hard to try and control them around the hips. The only reason you would go around the hips is if you can kind of do a throw using the hips and try and put the minotaur on the ground. But I don't think it would really work. It's better than nothing. But it's still an option, but it's something I will try to avoid. Instead, I would definitely try and go for the head. And minotaurs, yes, they are tall, but they're not going to be so tall where you cannot get to the head. Now, there's a particular technique that I've used again. As I say, when I was doing one, the biggest opponent I fought was 6'10", but I fought a couple of guys basically 7 foot tall, and what I do is I can reach a 7 foot tall person around the bottom part of their head. Ideally, I want to put my hands on the top at the back of their head, which I can't do with someone that tall, but I can bring their head down to me. And one of the ways that I do that is, one, I lock on with at least one hand to start off with, because you always want at least one hand around them. And then what you do is you do a push knee. Okay, so I can't show you in here, there's not enough room, but basically what you do is you get your knee, you push it into their gut, and it's not like you're using the force of the impact to move them, although, you know, if you go really hard and quick, you can do, the force can win them and can damage their, you know, their stomach area, their belly area, which is, you know, on most people not that strong. Most people don't have the best of abs. So you bang, you bash them in, but you're not relying on the damage of the knee to do anything. It's just simple pivoting. If you've got control of the head here and you push them here in just above the hip, well, they pivot around the hip, they get pushed here, hip pushed here, and around the hip then they come down. And so what you're doing is you're making them shorter, essentially. You use a push knee with control, whilst controlling the head with one arm or two arms to bring the head down and to bring it into a much more manageable position. Once it's in position, once it's lowered down to where you can grab it, bang, you lock onto the top of the head. And this is exactly what you do with a minotaur. So you bring the head down if you have to, or at the very beginning, if you can reach the head, they're not too tall for you, you bring the head down to around about here. Now at this point, he's going to be bent over, because he's so much taller than you, he's going to be bent over. His face is going to be here, his horns are probably going to be either side of your head, and you're grabbing him around the head, around the back of the top of the head. Now, it doesn't matter how strong he is, he's not getting out of that lock unless he's just literally astronomically strong. You've got pivots and sort of basic mechanics, basic physics helping you here. You don't have to put much strength into holding him. The only thing he can do at this point in time, with humans, it's not possible. He could push into you, okay? Now, the worst thing he could do is pull away from you. And I don't think a minotaur would do that, but a lot of people, the mistake they make in Muay Thai is once they're in this position, they try and walk away from you, you know, try and pull away and get away from you. It's a natural instinct, get away from someone who's suddenly grabbed you around the back of the head. As soon as they do that, as they pull back, they're pulling their own head down, ready for a knee to the head. And they're just making it easier for you to hold them. The lower they are, the more fucked they are, basically. Okay, at this point, if the minotaur was to pull backwards, out comes a knife, bang, knife to the back of the neck, he's dead, okay? But a minotaur is known for its aggression, and so what I would imagine it would do is it would push into you, and that's a problem because of its horns. You need to make sure those horns don't get you. That's an added complication, so we say, on what a human has. Humans, you don't need to worry about being gorged by horns, but possibly your shoulders might get damaged by the horns here. What I would have to say is just grin and bear it. If you do get clipped, grin and bear it, but try and keep the horns above this sort of level here, okay, and try and keep your head in between them so he can't actually penetrate you with the horns. So you keep the head down here, and he might then just suddenly push into you. And by doing that, by pushing into the opponent, you can sometimes, if you're fast and strong enough, push into the opponent and then kind of push up. So you might be able to break out, at which point then he's in front of you, and then you have to do the same thing. As soon as he's up, you lock back onto him, and you keep doing it until he tires out, okay? Or until he beats you, one of the two. But we're looking at situations on how you're in. So if he pushes towards you, with humans, you can kind of control them with your forearms and lock them in place. It's very hard for a human to do that. Now, I have fought some very, very strong people. My sparring partner is far stronger than I am. He, when he does that, does put me under pressure. I know he can't get up, but if he tries to grab my leg, for example, whilst pushing me forwards, that can prove issues, because then I've got to try and maintain my balance whilst being pushed forwards. Don't think a minotaur would do that. It would literally just try and rush you, and that's the only thing you need to worry about. However, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get its head down, which is, I say, with a push knee or with just a simple Muay Thai clinch. You get the head down, and before it can react, your thumbs. This is something you wouldn't normally do in Muay Thai, but you bring in some pancration, Pomcham pancration, or street fighting moves. Whichever martial art you're more familiar with. Street fighting is not martial arts, but it's still a valid thing to do. Once you've got the head there, you bring the thumbs in, So once you've got the head in, you bring the thumbs in and you gouge the eyes. Okay, so you just go and gouge the eyes. You can start off with that attack as well. If the Minotaur is particularly, you're worried about trying to get its head down, it might simply be too strong. I don't know, I've not fought a Minotaur. It might be too strong to bring down, and so if you're going on then, you can't bring his head down, you just go straight for the gouge attack. So you're up here, you're trying to reach, put that, bang, okay? And so what I would say is, don't underestimate a gouge attack. Gouge its eyes out, okay? At which point you've blinded the bull. He's still a threat, okay? And he's going to be raging around. What I would say at this point, run. Get out of there. Let him use up all his adrenaline, his rage. He's going to be charging around, trying to grab you. Get out of its way, because it grabs you, the blind or not, it knows where you are once it's grabbed you. It's going to like that, and it's going to snap you in two. Get out of the way until it calms down, and then finish it off with a sword or a knife to the back if you've got a backup arm, or just wait for him to. Well, you've blinded him, you've defeated him. You can do whatever you want from that point on in. So as I say, once you've done a Muay Thai, head down here or up here, you do a gouge attack, okay, and take the eyes out. That's how I would fight a Minotaur. I would go for its eyes, because every animal has the same weak spots, and that's normally its eyes, okay? And that's how I would get to its eyes. I would try and bring its head down, because at least then I can try and control him and stop him from attacking me. I know I've kind of gone into a little bit technical detail. I wish I could show you on a sparring partner, but unfortunately there are no Minotaurs free and available at this point in time. If I do meet a Minotaur who's willing to be filmed on here, I will more than happily obviously show you and demonstrate these techniques. But if you want to see these basic techniques on a human guys, then please actually watch my martial arts series, How Real Fighting, BR's Real Fighting, and you'll see the fighting techniques that I'm talking about. Okay, and I will be expanding on that series also. But that's how I would handle it, okay? Other options on how to handle them, more dirty fighting techniques, or pancration, which uses a lot of dirty fighting techniques, is rake attacks. Okay, humans again are vulnerable to this as well, and I can't see why a Minotaur wouldn't be the same. Rake attacks, again, if you can't go for the full gouge, you can rake the eyes and the ears. But why I brought up the rake attack is I'm trying to think of the anatomy of not just humans but also bulls, because they are hybridization of both, and that is that most bulls are controlled by their nose. They have a weak spot on their nose. Humans have known it for God knows how many thousand years. If you grab a bull or cow by its nose, you can control it. Okay, and so this would be the easiest way to handle them. Grab them by the nose. Now that's assuming that they have the same sort of receptors in their nose that a bull does. That's why you put bull rings in bulls, just to make them easier to control, and stop them from raging around so much. Now I'm not saying that's a guaranteed way of doing it. As I say, they are hybridization, but it's worth a shot. If it's you or them, grab the nose and see if you can control them with the nose, or at least give them a good nice palmer strike to the nose. It will make them back off. I mean, if you've ever been in a field surrounded by cows, luckily I've never been in a field with a raging bull, but cows are very curious creatures. They can kill you by just walking over you by mistake, and it can be quite scary when you're surrounded by about 20 to 30 cows. It's surprisingly scary. The way that you just back them off is you touch the nose and they'll back away. They don't like their nose being touched. Okay, and so one thing I would say is work the nose, which is something I would never say with a human. We're not that bothered about it. Yeah, it can get broken, but we're not controlled by our nose, okay? But a bull can be. And this is what I would say. The expansion to, I know I've done unarmed combat against a Minotaur there, potential weakness with its nose, as well as obviously the standard weakness of the eyes, and trying to control the head and trying to prevent the charge of the Minotaur. But the one other thing that I would say is, if you are in a hypothetical fantasy situation and you're going Minotaur hunting, or you're going into a dungeon where you highly expect there to be a Minotaur, there's one thing I would take above and beyond all other things, above any sword, any axe, any bow, anything other than maybe armour. I would like armour on, and that is a dog, okay? And when I say a dog, I mean specifically a dog that has been bred in past for bull baiting. Okay, so we're talking Staffordshire Bull Terriers, we're talking pit bulls, we're talking bulldogs, okay, especially bulldogs and staffies, okay. These have been bred in the past hundreds of years ago with the instinct to fight bulls. One, they're brave and loyal as anything. They ain't going to be intimidated by a minotaur, unlike yourself. And also they have the natural instinct built into them to go for a bull's nose. And of course, if you're in a fantasy setting, I would say that if you you are in an area where minotaurs are located, that you will have trained your man's best friend to have obviously those bull baiting fighting techniques that some modern day dogs have, and I would have trained them to go for a minotaur's face and nose, and I would have, you know, if I was going into a dungeon where I knew there was a minotaur, I'd take a good 10 to 20 dogs, all with this technique, well trained and disciplined, and I would just give them the command, and I would let the dogs deal with the minotaur for me. That's what I would do. Even one dog would probably be enough, because when the minotaur's got the dog on its face, then that's when you come in with your sword and just stab it in the gut. It's a little aggressive, guys, but as I say, I just thought that the last video I filmed is more almost just repetition, or my sort of different shade of the colour spectrum, so to speak. Like Scalagrim, Shadversity, they all give their opinions, and their opinions, in my opinion, are better than mine because of the type of weapons to use and maybe the tactics to use against a minotaur. But one thing I definitely do have is expertise on how to fight with my fists, with my hands, and that is how I would defend myself against a minotaur who is themselves also unarmed, and myself unarmed. And ultimately, if I had to go minotaur hunting, I would definitely take dogs. Okay. Anyway, that is my answer on how to fight a minotaur and how to defeat a minotaur and how to kill a minotaur. A couple of unusual questions. For those who want to ponder over such things. Minotaurs. If you were to kill the minotaur and you were hungry, would they taste like beef? Is it cannibalism? The hybrid animal, the half human, half bull, essentially. If you eat just the bull bits, does that count as beef? The human bits, do they count as human? Or does, awkward one, right? I don't know why I thought of that. And also, if you were a minotaur, how would you fight? I would just be interested. How would you use your size and strength to fight? Is there anything particular that you would want to try and do? For me, the answer is this. I would want to fight like almost like in the Iceni tribes, one of the old British tribes, pre-Roman, well, around the Roman times, and they used to fight the rich elements of that tribe on chariots, and they'd have chariots. I would, if I was a minotaur, have myself a chariot built, or I'd build my own chariot that was sturdy, big and sturdy enough to hold my body weight. I'd get on it and I'd have a pair of bulls pulling it. How scary would that be? Oh my god, a minotaur charging at you on a chariot pulled by raging bulls. That would be a threat indeed. But these are hypothetical things, guys. No one's ever written that into a book or anything before, but if you came up against that, I think that would be more deadly than even the elephant charges that Alexander the Great and Hannibal used on the Romans. I think that would be absolutely terrifying. Anyway, guys, just a couple of situations there for you guys to think about. If you want to talk about them in the comment section, feel free. If not, I'll see you on my next video. Any particular creature that you want me to focus on next, please put them in the comment section. I'm thinking dwarf. Okay, I'm thinking the fantasy dwarf, or the Duodin as they're sometimes called and stuff like that. But I'm thinking dwarf because there's some interesting mechanics there on how to fight them in unarmed combat also, because they're so short but so stocky, they're actually quite hard to fight. And I think in many ways they'd be harder to fight than a minotaur. I'll see you soon, guys.